Hello Pokebros, welcome back to the channel. Today we'll be continuing my version of Ash's Galar journey. Last time Ash met back up with Hop after winning his second gym badge. The trio of Ash, Gloria, and Hop then set off towards Galar Mine 2. At this point, Ash's team is Pikachu, Scorbunny, Corvisquire, and Choodle. But now that we have the intro stuff out of the way, let's hop in. We would open with our trio of Ash, Gloria, and Hop traveling towards the Galar Mine 2. While traveling there, Ash and Hop would discuss their upcoming gym battle with Kabu and Motostoke, and the upcoming battle tournament also being held there. However, while this conversation was happening, Gloria would inform the boys that they had arrived at the Galar Mine. The trio would then head inside. Hop would begin to feel a little uncomfortable at the change in atmosphere, making him feel claustrophobic. Then, just before they could travel any farther, Bede would show up. Hop would say to Bede, "What are you doing here?" Bede would snarkily reply, "I'm finding wishing stars for the chairman, the real most important person in Galar." Hop would then get angry, wanting to challenge Bede to a battle. However, Bede would decline, saying that he only had interest in battling Ash. Ash would then tell Bede that he could only battle him if he beat Hop. Bede would say, "Fine, I'll get a little warm-up in." Hop would then thank Ash for letting him get a chance to rematch Bede. The two trainers would then take their places, preparing to battle. Ash would declare that the battle would be a one-on-one, and the trainers would then send in their Pokémon. Hop would throw out Clobbopus while Bede would select Hatena. Hop would immediately realize the bad type matchup. Hatena would then attack with Confusion. Clobbopus would take the attack head-on. Hop would then tell Clobbopus to use Bulk Up. He would do so, raising his attack and defense. Hatena would then use Psybeam, hitting Clobbopus again. However, Clobbopus would then retaliate with a Payback, doing a lot of damage. Bede would be surprised at Hop's strength. Hop would then tell Clobbopus to follow up with a Rock Smash. Hatena would be very weakened, and Bede's cocky bravado was slipping as he thought he might lose. Just then, Hatena would begin to grow, evolving into Hatcham. Hatcham would then use her newly learned Dazzling Gleam. The attack would land head-on, taking Clobbopus out. Hop would be upset that he lost again to Bede. Bede would then say, "I hope you don't plan on participating in the Motostoke tournament, because you'll just embarrass yourself." Bede would then leave, saying he doesn't need to battle Ash, as he's proven himself enough already. Hop would then run off in tears, and Ash and Gloria would follow. Ash and Gloria would get lost in the tunnels trying to find Hop. They would then let out their Pokemon to help them look. Ash and Gloria would decide to split up so they could cover more ground. Scorbunny would light up the tunnel for Ash by kicking around a fiery stone, while Corvisquire would fly above, trying to see if he could see Hop. While Gloria traveled, Roly-Poly lit up the tunnel with his coals, while Squirrel would use his superior sense of smell to try and track Hop down. We would then cut back to Ash, as he was searching and Team Yell would corner him. Ash would ask what they wanted, and the two grunts would reveal that Ash was a threat to Marnie, so he must be taken out. Ash would then challenge him to a battle. The two grunts would send in Linoone and Thievul, while Ash would send in Choodle and Corvisquire. Choodle would start with a water gun, but it would veer way off course, hitting Corvisquire instead. Corvisquire would become angry, then striking Choodle with a drill peck. The grunts, seeing Ash struggling, would order their Thievul to attack with a snarl. The attack would knock Corvisquire to the ground. She would then fly back in the air, attacking with a drill peck, defeating the Thievul. Choodle would then try Water Gun again, however this time it would land, doing big damage to Linoone. Linoone would then attack with a Night Slash, taking Corvisquire out. Choodle would then attack with another Water Gun, but Linoone would dodge and charging with a Night Slash. However, Choodle would use Counter, dodging the attack and taking Linoone out. The Team Yell grunts would then run off. After they left, Ash would begin to hear sobs. Ash would follow the sound, and at the source he would find Hop, being comforted by his Drizzile. Hop would see Ash and would tell him to leave him alone, but Ash wouldn't listen to Hop, wanting to help Hop. Ash would then explain to Hop that losing isn't as bad as it seems. Ash would tell Hop how he lost many leagues before he won, and he lost many battles to rivals before defeating them. This would help cheer Hop up a bit. Hop would then get up off the ground, and he and Ash would head to find Gloria. After a short trek through the mine, Ash and Hop would find Gloria with a man in a Centiskorch. Gloria would then introduce the man as Kapu, the gym leader of Motostoke. Ash and Hop would then both be excited, wanting to battle him. Kapu would tell the boys that they can battle him after they arrive in Motostoke. Kapu would then show the trio the way out of the mine. After leaving the mine, Kapu would wish the trio farewell, then telling Ash and Hop that he is excited for their challenge. We would then cut to the trio camped out with all their Pokemon. Gloria is busy making some curry while Ash and Hop are training with their teams. While they're training, a Sizzlipede would approach the duo. Having liked what he saw in the training, the Sizzlepeep would like a battle. Ash would then let Hop attempt to catch it, since he already had a fire type in Scorbunny. Hop would thank Ash and would then throw out his Boltund. Hop would then order a Thunderfang, but the Sizzlepeep would counter with a Bug Bite. Both Pokemon would repeat their attacks to the same effect. The Sizzlepeep would then go for a Smoke Screen, blinding Boltund before striking him with a Flame Wheel, doing big damage. However, Hop would then call for another Thunderfang, and it would connect, taking the Sizzlepeep out. Hop would then toss a Pokeball, capturing the tiny bug Pokemon and bringing his team to 5. Ash would then congratulate Hop on his new capture. The trio would then eat their curry. The next day, we would see the trio traveling to Motostoke. After a short trek, they would finally arrive. However, after arriving, Hop and Ash would realize that they still have 3 days before the tournament. Gloria would then suggest to the boys that they challenge the gym before the tournament. The boys would like the idea and would head for Motostoke Stadium. After arriving, they remember that only one of them can challenge at a time. They would then do rock, paper, scissors to see who gets to go first. Ash would win, and he would head out onto the pitch. Kabu would greet Ash after he sets foot on the pitch, and he would say that he's excited to see Ash's strength in person. Both trainers would then send out their first Pokemon. Ash would send in Choodle, while Kabu would send in Torkoal. Ash would then order Choodle to use Water Gun. The attack would land, but Torkoal wouldn't be hurt. Kabu would then order a Body Slam. Choodle would quickly dodge, then landing another Water Gun, doing more chip damage. Kabu would order a Sunny Day. Ash remembered that the sun powers up fire moves and weakens water moves. Kabu would then order an Overheat. The attack would land, doing big damage to Choodle. However, it would also weaken Torkoal. Ash would then tell Choodle to use another Water Gun, and this time it would take Torkoal out. Kabu would be impressed, and he would then send in his Arcanine. Ash, seeing Choodle weaken, would decide to switch to Pikachu. Kabu would order an Extreme Speed, and Arcanine would charge in, knocking Pikachu back. Pikachu would then fire off a Thunderbolt, but Arcanine would dodge with a Dig, then hitting Pikachu, knocking him into the air. Pikachu, while in the air, would attack with an Electro Web, trapping Arcanine. Pikachu would then fire off a Thunderbolt, doing big damage. Kabu would then tell his Arcanine to attack with a Flare Blitz, but Pikachu would dodge using Quick Attack. However, Arcanine would then strike with an Extreme Speed, taking Pikachu out. Ash would be a little surprised that Pikachu had lost so fast. Ash would then send Choodle back in. Arcanine would then charge him with a Thunderfang. Choodle would barely dodge, however. Arcanine would follow up with an Extreme Speed, knocking Choodle back. Choodle would then attack with a Water Gun, but Arcanine would dodge, then landing a Thunderfang, doing big damage. Ash would then begin to think of a strategy. Ash would then get an idea. Arcanine would then charge him with another Thunderfang, and Ash would tell Choodle to wait. Just when Arcanine opens his mouth to bite, Ash would tell Choodle to use Water Gun. Choodle would do so, shooting the water down Arcanine's throat. While Arcanine was stunned, Choodle would charge him with a bite, taking him out. Kabu would be impressed with Ash's creative battle style. Kabu would then send out his final Pokemon, Centiskorch. Centiskorch would immediately attack with a Fire Lash. Choodle would try to dodge, but he wouldn't be fast enough, getting hit head-on. Choodle would then attack with a Water Gun, but Centiskorch would dodge, then attacking with a Lunge, knocking Choodle down. Choodle would try to stand, but Centiskorch would then attack with a Slam, knocking him back down, fainted. Ash would then send in his last Pokemon, Scorbunny. The crowd would begin to cheer, and Scorbunny would start kicking his rock around, showing off. However, while this was happening, Centiskorch would come up, smacking Scorbunny down with a Slam. Scorbunny would then charge him with a Flame Charge. Centiskorch would take the attack head-on, then retaliate with a Fire Lash. Ash would then decide to Dynamax Scorbunny. Kabu would respond by Gigantamaxing his Centiskorch. Ash would then order a Max Strike, and Scorbunny would land the attack head-on. Centiskorch would then attack with a G-Max Centinferno. It wouldn't do much damage to Scorbunny, but he would become trapped in a fiery vortex. Ash would order a Max Flare, but Centiskorch would dodge, then attacking with a Max Flutterby. Scorbunny would dodge the attack, then landing another Max Strike. It would do good damage, but he would then revert to normal size, and he would take damage from the fiery vortex. Centiskorch would then attack with one more G-Max Centinferno. Scorbunny wouldn't be able to dodge the attack, taking it head-on. Centiskorch 2 would then go back to normal size. Both Pokemon would be really weakened, so both trainers would call for the last moves. Ash would call for a Quick Attack, and Kabu would call for a Lunge. Both Pokemon would charge in, but only Centiskorch would be hit. Centiskorch would then faint. Ash and the crowd would cheer, while Scorbunny would start doing tricks for the crowd. Kabu would then congratulate Ash on a great battle, giving him his 3rd gym badge. Hop would then begin to prepare for his battle with Kabu. After arriving back at the Pokemon Center, Ash would wonder where Gloria and Hop went. After talking with the nurse Joy, Ash would learn that Gloria and Hop had headed to Gloria's next curry cook-off. Ash would ask the name of the restaurant that it was being held at, and he would head there right after. After arriving, Ash would see that it was just starting. We would then switch to Gloria's POV, where she had just started cooking with her Pokemon. She was trying the same recipe she used last time since she had won that competition. However, what she didn't know was that the recipe had been tampered with the first time. We would then see Samantha cooking with her Meowstic and Slurpuff, this time focusing solely on herself. Gloria would feel really confident in her cooking. The judges would then inform the chefs that their time was up. They would all give the judges their dishes and they would try them all. However, to Gloria's shock, Samantha would win the cook-off and she would get 5th place, not getting any points at all. Samantha would then gloat, saying that beginner's luck can only carry you so far. She would then thank the judges before leaving. After the competition, Ash and Hop would console Gloria, trying to make her feel better. After talking with Ash and Hop, she would decide that she would participate in the Motostoke tournament as a way to get some frustration out. Ash and Hop would be glad as they think everyone should try Pokemon battling. The trio would then head back to the Pokemon Center. The next day, it would be Hop's turn to challenge Kabu. Ash would wish Hop good luck before heading to the stands. On the pitch, Kabu would tell Hop that he hopes their battle is as good as his battle with Ash. This would fire Hop up, and the battle would then begin. Kabu would throw out Ninetales, and Hop would send in Drizzile. Kabu would then say, "It's gonna take more than type advantage to beat me." Hop would then order a Water Pulse, however Ninetales would dodge using Double Team. Ninetales would then attack with a Quick Attack, knocking Drizzile back. Hop would then call for a Mist, and Drizzile would hide within the mist. He would then sneak up, striking Ninetales from behind with a Water Pulse. Ninetales would be very weakened, but would fire off a Will-O-Wisp, burning Drizzile. Drizzile would then finish Ninetales off with one more Water Pulse. Kabu would be impressed and would then send in his second Pokemon, Salazzle. Hop would then Dynamax Drizzile since he was burned. Hop would then order a Max Geyser. The attack would land, doing big damage to Salazzle. It would then begin to rain. Salazzle would then land a Venoshock. Drizzile would take burn damage before, then attacking with another Max Geyser. However, Salazzle would dodge before attacking with another Venoshock. Hop would then order a Max Strike, and Drizzile would knock Salazzle right into the ground. Kabu, seeing Salazzle was on the verge of fainting, would call for an Overheat. The attack would land on the now shrunken Drizzile, but Drizzile would then strike with a Pound, taking Salazzle out. Kabu would then send in his last Pokemon, Centiskorch. However, before anyone could attack, Drizzile would faint from burn damage. Hop would then send in his Sizzlipede. Kabu would call for a lunge, but Sizzlipede would barely dodge, then attack him with a bite. However, it wouldn't do much damage. Kabu would then decide to Gigantamax his Centiskorch. Kabu would call for a G-Max hit to Inferno when they would connect, taking Sizzlipede out. Hop would be shocked, but he would then send in his final Pokemon, Wooloo. Hop would call for a takedown, but Centiskorch would use a Max Butterfly, knocking Wooloo back. Wooloo would then use a Defense Curl, raising her defense. Centiskorch would attack with the G-Max and Inferno, again knocking Wooloo back and trapping her in a fiery vortex. Centiskorch would then revert to normal size. Centiskorch would charge in with a Fire Lash, but Wooloo would use another Defense Curl, weakening the attack. Hop would then order another takedown, knocking Centiskorch back. Wooloo would then take damage from the fire and the recoil. Both Pokemon would now be very weakened, so the trainers would call for their last moves. Hop would call for a takedown, while Kabu would order a lunge. Both Pokemon would charge in, hitting each other. They would then look at each other, but only Centiskorch would fall. Hop would then run out full of joy, hugging his Wooloo. The crowd would erupt in cheers. Kabu would then congratulate Hop on a great battle, before giving him his badge. Hop would then head out to the lobby, meeting up with Ash and Gloria. Both would congratulate him for his great performance. The trio would then head to the Pokemon Center for the Motostoke tournament in 2 days. And that's all for today, Pokebros. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Are you excited for the Motostoke tournament? And how did you like seeing Hop battle? Comment your favorite part of this episode below. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. Bye, Pokebros.